Hello, good day, and welcome to this week's Buddhist Church of San Francisco virtual Sangha Service. I'm happy to be able to welcome you because to me that would indicate that wherever you are, you're doing well to the extent that you're able to participate and join us for this Sangha service. So we'll begin with the customary ringing of the kansho, the calling bell. And then for today, I will lead in the reading of the three treasures, both in Japanese and English, which is found in the BCA service book on pages 7 and 8. And for those of you who have access to our website, we have the service book that has been uploaded onto that website. For today's Dharma message, I'm happy to introduce or welcome Sensei Leo Joslin to offer his reflections and to appreciate how he's continued to lead our Wednesday evening mindfulness gatherings, which currently are held online through a Zoom app. And for those of you who would like to join, you're welcome to check or let us know by contacting the Buddhist Church of San Francisco, whether by phone or email, to let us know how you can access that activity. And then we'll close with a closing meditative reading. And at the conclusion, and I'll announce this once again later, we're going to be able to view last year's Bon Odori program, which began with the Nijyuu Isseki dance. And in a way, it symbolizes this idea that we're beginning a new period in our lives with this transition to a so-called new normal that will continue for the time being. And so with that, once again, I welcome you and thank you for joining us. Namo notes, namo notes. 人参受け方し、今すでに行く。仏法聞き方し、今すでに聞く。好み根性に向かってどせずば、さらにいずれの章に向かってか好みをどうせん。大衆もろともに指針に三分に消えし立てまつるべし。自ら仏に消えし立てまつる。まさに願わくは主情とともに大道を体現して無常意を起こさん。自ら法に消えし立てまつる。まさに願わくば主情とともに深く教蔵に入りてちうみのごとくならん。自ら僧に消えし立てまつる。まさに願わくば主情とともに大小を通りして一切無限ならん。無人寺未妙の方は百千文言にも相合うことかたし、我今検問し許することへたり、願わくは主情如来の真実義を下し立てまつらん。ナマンダツ、ナマンダツ、ナマンダツ。Hard it is to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult it is to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard it is to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teachings. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. For today's chanting, we'll be following the quiet sitting. We'll be chanting the Juseige, which is on page 93 of the BCA service book. 仏説無量寿経Juseige. From the Sutra of Immeasurable Life, the verses reaffirming the vows. kansho segan ishimu jodo shiga fumanzok seifu josho ga gao muryoko fui dai seishu fusai shovingu seifu josho ga gashi jobundo myosho chojipo kukyo mishomon seifu josho ga ryoku jin shonen joe shubongyo shigumu jodo isho tennin shi jinriki endaiko fusho musaido shoujo sankumyo kosai shuyakunan kaihi chiegen neshi komoan heisoku shoakudo sudan zen shumon kosojo manzok iyoro jipo nijigan shujuki tenko onpugen ishu kaihozo kose kudokuho jo dai shuchu seppo shishiku kuyo issai butsu gusoku shutoku hon ganne shinjo man tokui sangai o nyobut mugechi tsudan mi fusho gangaku erik toshi saisho son shiganya koka daisen no kando kokusho tennin tou chimyoke of serenity and joy. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda.
Please join me in Gassho as we read the words of Shinran Shonin from notes on the inscriptions on sacred scrolls. Amida's vow is a great torch in the long night of ignorance. We should reflect that, although our wisdom eyes are dark, we need not despair. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Hello, my name is Leo Joslin, and I'm a minister's assistant at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco. Thanks for joining us for our Sunday service, May 3rd. And this segment of the service is coming from my home because we're sheltering in place. And so let me apologize ahead of time for any lighting difficulties or any sounds or noises from the streets that may come in. We're not much of a technologically oriented household here. And so we're just doing the best we can with the situation as it is. So even though we can't go to the temple because of shelter in place, I think it's wonderful that we can still do services. We record chanting and gathas in one location, usually the Hondo, and then the Dharma talks comes from our homes or wherever we may be. And then if there's music, that comes from yet another location. And they're all put together into a coherent service. And that requires a lot of skill and effort. So I'd like to thank two individuals, especially Kevin Yoza and Keith Kojimoto, for all of their hard work to make this possible. Our aspirational prayer is that soon we'll be able to join together again in each other's presence to celebrate the life and light that is ours through Amida Buddha. So these are difficult times indeed. We miss seeing each other. We miss the social hall. We miss the good food. For now, sheltering in place, the latest word is that it'll be extended until the end of May. So we may have a little more time to go. We're currently in the midst of a pandemic, a huge disruption to life as we know it. Even if a vaccine or treatment for coronavirus were to be discovered, we still have daunting challenges. There's still global warming, the threat of nuclear war, the divisiveness that is tearing us apart, financial devastation for so many who've lost their jobs, racial discrimination that's led to disproportionate suffering for people of color. The list goes on and on. Suffering is taking place on a massive scale. So how can we not feel overwhelmed at times? So this is what I want to talk about today. How can we, as Shin Buddhists, best take care of ourselves during this pandemic? I started participating in an online gathering of mindfulness practitioners led by Dr. Daniel Siegel, professor of psychiatry at UCLA Medical School and founding co-director of the Mindfulness Research Center at UCLA. I'm a big fan of his. He's on the cutting edge of research and teaching in the field of the mind, especially the neurophysiological foundations of mindfulness. I've been attending his online PEP talks. PEP stands for Personal Experience Planetary Pandemic. Over 10,000 people have been attending these talks, logging in from all over the world. So the question was asked a couple of weeks ago, how do we take care of ourselves if we're feeling overwhelmed? And Dr. Siegel gave what I found to be a very interesting answer. He suggested that we approach the pandemic using what he calls the 4 S's. Now this is a model. The 4 S's are safety, seeing, soothing, security. This approach is a model that was originally used for child rearing, for teaching parents on how to raise children that are emotionally resilient. And so he modified it as a means of approaching the pandemic. And so what I did was modify it a little bit further to as a means for how to approach the pandemic as Shin Buddhists. And so let me emphasize that what I'll be sharing today is only what is working for me personally as a Shin Buddhist. And I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I'm simply hoping that that you'll find something useful from this. So again, the 4 S's: safety, seeing, soothing, security. They're not separate, but they overlap. So let's go over these one by one and see how they might help us. The first S is safety, so we stay safe. What are we mindful of in terms of safety? We're mindful of the immediate environment. We stay safe within our physical bodies. We protect ourselves by being 6 feet away from others. We wear masks, wash hands. We watch where we put our hands. We are careful not to touch our faces. When we go out in public places, we only do so if we need an essential service. We're reducing the risk of exposing each other to the virus. It arises out of compassion and kindness. So we're not doing it only for ourselves, but for others, and deep down inside, we know this, and it strengthens our connections. The first S is safety. But besides physical safety, there's also emotional safety. And this is where the second S comes in. The second S is seeing. So what does this mean? What does it mean that seeing? What is it that we are seeing? This specifically applies to our thoughts and feelings. We're mindful of what we're thinking. We're mindful of what we're feeling. We stand back and put space between ourselves and our feelings. Standing back so we can see them. And when we see them, we name them. For example, is this anger? Is this fear? Is this sadness? And further, we note where it is in the body that we feel it and what it feels like. We allow the feeling to be, and we allow it to pass. And in our world of impermanence, we know that it will pass. But we start by naming it, and this is key, because research in neurophysiology demonstrates that when we name difficult feelings such as anger, fear, and anxiety, there is a concurrent neurophysiological effect. They can actually lessen and decrease when we name them. They can become more manageable. Dr. Siegel has an expression he likes to use: name it to tame it. We name the feeling to tame the feeling. And when we are mindful in this manner, we are better able to respond skillfully in the present moment. So this helps us individually and interpersonally. When someone is having an emotional difficulty and they feel heard and understood by others, they feel much better. Their suffering is alleviated. And this is confirmed by research. The second S is a practical step toward taking care of ourselves and others. If we need support and we talk to someone who can see us and understand us, we'll feel better. And if someone else is struggling and we reach out to them and let them know that we see them and understand them, then they'll feel better. So let me give you an example of how this might work. And this is something that happened to me just not too long ago. So I went into a major drugstore to buy coffee filters and toothpaste. I just needed those 2 items. And this was shortly after the pandemic was underway. So I went in there and I couldn't find the coffee filters. So I asked this young man in the aisle who was there stocking shelves, I asked him, where are the coffee filters? And so he looked up at me and he seemed a little upset. So he said, okay, I'll tell you where they are. But it's almost 2 o'clock, and after 2 o'clock, we don't have time to answer any of your questions. So anyway, I thought that was kind of odd, but I followed him over to where the coffee filters were. And as I was reaching for them, he starts pointing out to the empty shelves and saying, why do you have to buy all these paper towels? Why do you have to buy all this toilet paper? Don't you know that we have to restock these shelves? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to kill us? And I was a little taken aback. And I also found myself getting a little angry and a little defensive. And so I was getting ready to say something like, well, you need to be stocking your shelves. A lot of people have lost their jobs and they'd be happy to have yours. If you can't do it, then give your job to someone who can. But I didn't go there. I could have, and part of me was wanting to, but instead I was able to stand back and name anger for what it was. I said, okay, this is anger. This is what it feels like. And then I was able to step back from it. In doing so, actually, the actual exercise of going through that was what allowed me to step back. And so I was able to respond more skillfully. So what I said was, I'm sorry that this is so stressful for you. It must be very difficult to keep these shelves stocked, and it must be very frustrating for you. I hope things get better. Hang in there. Please hang in there. And then I walked away to make my purchase. Anyway, about a week later, I went back to the store and I saw this young man in the aisle, and he saw me. And I'm pretty sure he recognized me. And anyway, I continued with my shopping. I didn't say anything. I didn't go down that aisle. I just got what I needed and went up to the registers. And he left the aisle and ran over to his register and called me over. And he didn't need to do that because there wasn't really a line. And he was so pleasant and so nice and courteous and friendly, very friendly. And I think he was trying to say thank you. I think that was his way of saying thank you, because I think what happened was that he had been very distressed. And maybe our interaction helped him to calm down a little bit. Maybe he was able to feel better. I'm only guessing. I don't know for sure, but that's what it felt like. But that's an example of how this can work, how seeing can help. And it moves into the third S. Okay, so the third S is soothing. Okay, so we can see there's an overlap because we just spoke about how seeing, thoughts, and feelings can soothe difficult emotions. Soothing is a movement toward kindness and compassion. Compassion can be described as the quivering of the heart in the presence of suffering. And kindness is what moves us toward alleviating that suffering. When we start having compassion toward ourselves, there are numerous ways that we can take care of ourselves by self-soothing. So we're practicing self-compassion. If we're feeling overwhelmed, then maybe it's time to take a break or a time out. Maybe we need to do some pleasure reading or watch a favorite show. Maybe walking a pet, being with a pet, taking a walk. Spiritual practices can also be very healing and soothing. Listening to the Dharma, chanting, a moment of silent sitting, metta practice, gratitude practice. So now is a good time to deepen whatever practice works best for you, keeping in mind that our goal is not enlightenment or the gaining of merit, but simply the alleviation of suffering. And of course, our core practice is the Nembutsu, and we'll get to that shortly. So as we move to alleviate suffering in ourselves, we become more present and more available to help others. We're better able to allow compassion and kindness to flow through us. I know that the temple members are contacting those who are isolated and needing support. We must stay connected during these times. Let me add a gentle reminder that if any of us continue to feel overwhelmed, even after self-soothing or support from others, it may be necessary to get some guidance from a professional, such as a professional counselor or therapist or spiritual advisor. This is always an important option. So this brings us to the fourth S, security. Where do we go for security? This is the final S, and for us as Shin Buddhists, the most important one. This is the one the others lead to, and the one that the others arise out of. As Shin Buddhists, our security is found in the primal vow, the deep aspiration to bring all sentient beings to enlightenment. This aspiration arises from reality and suchness itself. And we have wonderful scriptures to support this. As stated by Shinran Shonin in hymns based on gathas in praise of Amida Buddha, the light of wisdom exceeds all measure, and every finite living being receives this illumination that is like the dawn. This scripture reminds us that the power of the vow is at work for each and every one of us. Furthermore, Shinran writes, in notes on the inscriptions on sacred scrolls, realize that great love and compassion tirelessly and constantly protect this self. This is the blessing of being grasped, never to be abandoned. So let's not forget this. Let's remain mindful of the immense benefit that all of us share in. And another scripture, as stated in the Tanisho, if we revere the power of the vow all the more deeply, gentleness and forbearance will surely arise in us through its spontaneous working. With everything we do, we should constantly and fervently call to mind Amida's immense benevolence without any thought of being wise. Then the Nembutsu will indeed emerge. And the way I read this, it emerges because it truly is a part of us. So herein lies our security. We remain mindful of the Buddha. We take refuge in the Buddha. And we say the Nembutsu. There is great security in the Dharma. So to bring this to a close, I'll just summarize by saying that the 4 S's, safety, seeing, soothing, security, simply a practical model that I personally find useful for how to take care of myself and others. I hope to remember to remain aware of them, always remembering that the Nembutsu is at the core of security, always remembering to live the Nembutsu. So maybe I'm hoping that there's a piece of this that you'll find useful for yourself, for taking care of yourself, for taking care of others. In closing, I'd like to say our hearts go out to those who are struggling during this pandemic, recognizing that we must, as a species and as a planet, move toward compassion and kindness, realizing that we are all in this together, interconnected, part of a oneness that pervades everything. Please join me in kansho as I read once again from notes on the inscriptions on sacred scrolls. Realize that great love and compassion tirelessly and constantly protect this self. This is the blessing of being grasped, never to be abandoned. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Well, thank you for joining us today, and I hope to see you real soon. Thank you.
For today's closing reflection, I would like to repeat the verse, the Karuna Prayer, shared by Reverend Elaine Donlin, that is taken from the Meditation Sutra. In trusting in great compassion, may the foolishness of self be shed, transforming me into a conduit of loving kindness. May I be a medicine for the sick and weary, nursing their afflictions until they are healed. May I become food and drink during times of famine. May I protect the helpless and the poor. May I be a bed for those who need rest. May I be a lamp for those who need the light of Buddha Dharma. May all find happiness through my actions, and let no one suffer because of me, whether they love or hate me, whether they hurt or wrong me. May all experience true and trusting to boundless compassion and realize the pure land of bliss. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. So with that, we will now conclude this week's Sangha Service and time of reflection, that sheltering in place basically provides us with the time to reflect, to consider what is essential in our lives, and to be able to acknowledge all of the innumerable causes and conditions that are constantly working to sustain and support us in the various forms of the staff of the hospitals and care homes who are trying to heal those who have contracted the coronavirus. And the countless people who are behind the scenes who make our utilities continue to operate so that we have the power, the water, and the means to keep ourselves healthy. And the stores and the producers of the foods and those who carry those products to make them available for us. For those who are experiencing the uncertainties of having lost their livelihoods, well, there are people who are ready and are dedicated to trying to provide for as many people as possible to help us get through this together. So those are the appreciations for today's gathering in place. And I would also once again acknowledge the efforts and expertise of Kevin Yoza and Keith Kojimoto, who help produce these weekly broadcasts. And as a few additional reminders, you're welcome to join our weekly book club that meets at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays. For those who would like to join, please contact the Buddhist Church San Francisco by phone or email, so we could give you the instructions for how to participate in that activity. And then on Wednesday evenings, you're welcome to join the weekly mindfulness gathering led by Sensei Leo Joslin, and that begins at 6:30. So for that too, you can contact the church by phone or email. And one final announcement, reminder that our Buddhist Church of San Francisco Junior YBA is participating in the Bay District Junior YBA raffle. And then tickets are available and are being sold through the Junior YBA members, or else you could send your donations to the Buddhist Church office and we'll pass them on to the Junior YBA members. And so the tickets, well, there's the announcement in our current Light of Dharma. So you could go check that out, either online or if you receive the hard copy, and see what that activity is about. So concluding, I'll remind you that for today's closing musical meditation is a rerunning of a scene from last year's Bon Odori, the beginning of the event with the traditional march and entrance of the dancers to the music, Nijyuu Isseki, a celebration of the 21st century. And in that way, this celebration could also express our own aspirations for entering this new phase of our journey through this life as we are together in the Nembutsu. Thank you again for your participation, for your presence, and for your continued dedication to supporting each other in the light and life of boundless compassion, affirming the life we share together with the expression and affirmation, Namo Amida Butsu, 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 Namo Amida Butsu.